10 to 15 pounds of nitrogen, 5 to 10 pounds of phosphorus, and 10 to 12 pounds of potassium per ton. Poultry manure has a higher percentage of all three elements. The National Organic Program is very specific about the use of manure. Composted manure is definitely preferred, but if raw manure is applied, then the timing of application is critical. Where raw manure is used on land-growing crops for human consumption, it must not be applied within 120 days of harvest for a crop where the edible portion touches the soil, or 90 days of harvest where the edible portion does not touch the soil. Second source of nitrogen is the compost. For a product to technically qualify as compost under the NOP is a must to start with a carbon to nitrogen ratio between 25:1 and 40:1 and be maintained at a temperature of between 131 degrees Fahrenheit and 170 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 days, during which time the materials must be turned a minimum of 5 times. If compost is made in this manner, then it can be applied to plants with no restrictions of timing. The third source of nitrogen is compost tea. Long favored by organic gardeners and biodynamic farmers, compost tea is coming under criticisms because improperly made compost tea may have the potential for spreading foodborne pathogens onto plant parts destined to be eaten raw by people. It continues to be a major topic of discussion among federal regulators. If you are not sure whether your compost has met all the requirements, especially if you are using purchased compost, then the timing restrictions of the raw manure will probably apply. The fourth source of nitrogen could be plant and seaweed products, like alfalfa meal or pellets, contain around 3% nitrogen and are commonly used as an animal feed. This is an excellent fertilizer material in high-value horticultural crops, but would probably be too expensive for field crops. It is thought to contain unknown growth factors which make its mineral content more effective as plant nutrients. The fifth source of nitrogen could be the leaf and plant waste compost, available, or you can make it yourself. In many cases, the compost is a good product, but it is sometimes ridden with impurities such as car waste, pesticides, and garbage. Sixth source of nitrogen could be the soybean meal, which is about 6 to 1.4 to 4 nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, or NPK. It can be useful but is extremely expensive. Organic farmers should be careful about not using conventional GMO soybean meal, although it is not specifically prohibited. Seventh, another source of nitrogen could be most seaweed fertilizers that come from kelp that has been harvested, dried, and ground. Kelp meal can be applied directly to the soil or in a starter fertilizer. It flows well and is easily applied with most fertilizer applicators. It can be mixed with other dry fertilizers and amendments. Soil application rates for kelp meal commonly range from 150 to 250 pounds per acre for pastures, forages, and small grains. About 200 to 400 pounds per acre are recommended for corn, horticultural crops, and gardens. Since it is expensive, kelp meal is most commonly used only on high-value crops. Eighth source of nitrogen would be from dried raw seaweed. Dried raw seaweed tends to contain about 1% of nitrogen, a trace of phosphorus, and 2% potassium, along with magnesium, sulfur, and numerous trace elements. Raw seaweeds are prepared by various methods and sold under a number of brand names. Number 9 source of nitrogen from animal byproducts could be blood meal. Blood meal is dried slaughterhouse waste and allowed under the NOP even from non-organic animals. Blood meal contains about 12 to 13% nitrogen, and unless used carefully, it can burn the plants with ammonia, lose much of its nitrogen through volatilization, and encourage fungal growth. It is also very expensive. 10th source of nitrogen from animal byproducts could be feather meal. Feather meal is a common byproduct of the poultry slaughter industry and is allowed under the LOP. Although total nitrogen levels are fairly high, 7 to 10%, the nature of feathers is such that they break down and release their nitrogen much more slowly than many products of similar price. The 11th source of nitrogen from animal byproduct could be fish meal and fish emulsion. Fish meal and fish emulsion are, like most animal byproducts, usually has an analysis around 4-4-1. Fish emulsion may be fortified with chemical fertilizers, so organic farmers should be suspicious of any product with phosphorus content in excess of 4%. Fish products may also contain synthetic preservatives, stabilizers, and other products prohibited under the National Organic Farmers. Number 12, other sources of nitrogen could be most organic farmers try to supply their nitrogen needs with legumes in the crop rotation or with manures and compost. Sodium nitrate were added to the list after much discussion. It was stipulated that the nitrogen obtained from sodium nitrate must account for no more than 20% of the crop's total nitrogen requirement. Other method to boost soil fertility is the phosphate sources. 13th, there are three main types of mineral phosphate. First is colloidal phosphate from clay. Second is coming from the soft rock phosphate, mostly from ancient sea deposits. And third is from the hard rock phosphate from volcanic deposits. The 13th method, which is coming from phosphate sources, is the colloidal phosphate. Clay-based phosphates tend to be more readily available than the rock phosphates, and soft rock phosphate is more available than hard rock phosphate. Synthetic phosphorus fertilizers are made by reacting rock phosphate with acids and other chemicals to convert the phosphorus into a water-soluble form. Bone meal typically contains about 27% total phosphate, and nearly all of that is readily available. The 14th method of a phosphate source to boost soil fertility is from soft rock phosphate. The analysis numbers tend to be quite low for rock phosphate because little of the phosphorus present is water soluble. Rock phosphate is generally made up not only of phosphorus but also of calcium, carbon, and lots of trace elements, most of which are valuable plant food. Unfortunately, some sources of naturally mined phosphate can also be high in heavy metals. Organic phosphate materials are most effectively when applied to a growing cover crops a year or more before the crops will need the nutrients. This will give the soil microbes the opportunity to convert the insoluble phosphate into more available and stable forms. Legumes, like clover, are very efficient in breaking down rock phosphate into more available forms. The 15th method to boost soil fertility, which is coming from phosphate raw sources, is a hard rock phosphate. Another efficient way to use rock phosphate is to add it directly to livestock manure in the barn, where the manure acids dissolves much of the total phosphate, and the phosphate stabilizes the nitrogen in the manure. Many of the same advantages can be used by adding 20 to 50 pounds of colloidal rock phosphate to 1 ton, 2 cubic yards of manure when composting. Number 16th method of boosting soil fertility is coming from the potassium sources. Potassium sulfate and potassium magnesium sulfate are allowed if you can clearly document this using mined source that has not been treated with acid or any other chemical reaction to make the potassium more available. Potassium sulfate is the better choice for high magnesium soils, but it is fairly reactive and must be used carefully. There are synthetic forms of potassium sulfate, so make sure you are getting the mined product. Number 17th source coming from potassium is the use of granite dust. Granite dust is often sold as a slowly available potash source for organic production. Granite dust typically contains from 1 to 5% potassium depending on overall mineral composition of the rock, but granite is mostly feldspar, a highly insoluble material, so little of the potassium is easily available. Number 18th method is the use of glauconite, commonly sold as green sand. Total potassium content of green sand is around 7%, all of which is deeply locked into the mineral and only slowly available. The high price of green sand, however, limits its use solely to high-value horticultural applications, to small amounts of banded starter fertilizer. Number 19 is the calcium sources. Calcium sources could be lime and gypsum. Lime and gypsum are valuable products to moderate the soil acidity and deliver essential calcium. When rising soil pH and adding calcium, we might want to avoid high magnesium or dolomitic lime. High calcium lime or gypsum, which is calcium sulfate, are better choices. Gypsum is also a valuable source of sulfur, which is critical for healthy plants and for healthy animals that eat the plants. Make sure that the lime and gypsum are naturally mined, not industrial waste products. Burned lime is not allowed. Number 20, secondary and minor nutrients from rock powder. Micronutrients can be supplied in small quantities in a variety of rock dusts. Certain types of synthetic micronutrients may be allowed in tiny quantities in a mixed organic fertilizer. Basalt dust, if available at a reasonable cost, can provide a wide range of trace minerals to agricultural system over a period of several years. The International Atomic Energy Agency also by microdose fertilizers applications to replenish losses through plant uptake and other processes, and by minimizing losses through leaching below the crop rooting zone by improved water and nutrient application. According to U. Lovell, soil fertility and sustainable agriculture practitioners know that most soils today need their health and vitality rebuilt. In times past, nature built healthy, vital soils, and there is value in copying nature in rebuilding soil health. However, we cannot afford to take millions of years to do so, as nature did. We need intelligent intervention, such as cultivation, grazing, composting, soil conservation, weaning or green manuring, soil testing and soil remineralization, fertilizer priorities, phosphorus humates, and visual soil assessment. Wikipedia defines soil fertility as the ability of soil to sustain agricultural plant growth, like providing plant habitat, and result in sustained and consistent yields of high quality. A fertile soil has the following properties. Number 1 is the ability to supply essential plant nutrients and water in adequate amounts and proportion for plant growth and reproduction. The second property of soil fertility is the absence of toxic substances, which may inhibit plant growth. The third property for soil fertility is the sufficient soil depth for adequate root growth and water retention. Number 4 is good internal drainage, allowing the sufficient aeration for optimal root growth, although some plants such as rice tolerate water logging. The fifth property is topsoil. Topsoil with sufficient soil organic matter for healthy soil structure and soil moisture retention. Number 6 is the soil pH, in the range of 5.5 to 7, suitable for most plants, but some prefer or tolerate more acid or alkaline conditions. Number 8 is adequate concentrations of essential plant nutrients in plant available forms. Number 9, the last, could be the presence of a range of microorganisms that support plant growth.
Audio Jungle.
I hope you learned something today. If you like this video, please hit subscribe and click the bell button for more video updates. Keep sharing because power is gained by sharing knowledge, not by hoarding it. God bless and stay safe, everyone.